Emilie Morris wore a wire to prove her high school coach had molested her. Before the case could go to trial, she was found dead, the death labeled as suspicious. All charges against the coach were subsequently dropped. Emilie Morris was sexually abused by her track coach, Jim Wilder, who was 13 years her senior, in the 90s. The suspected relationship was reported to school officials at Lindbergh High, who in '96, after a complete investigation, concluded there was nothing inappropriate possibly happening between the two, and that Wilder was a positive influence on his athletes. Although by law, Lindbergh school officials would be required to notify state child protective services of the reported suspicions, they did not. It has been hypothesized in order to avoid scandal. After suffering silently for years with the trauma of what occurred, in 2013, Emilie sought help with her local police department, who advised her to wear a wire in order to capture her abuser's confession on tape. Tape can be heard here. From these admissions, Wilder was then arrested and charged with 6 counts of statutory sodomy. The case is even more insidious as it appears there was a clear pattern of Wilder diminishing and destroying Emilie's self-esteem, and the emotional abuse in particular caused her lasting psychological injury. Through her late teens and most of her 20s, she suffered from bulimia and depression, using alcohol to cope. In 2008, Wilder was arrested based on a report that he had sexual contact with a current female student. Emilie, married with 2 children, did not come forward at this time. Due to lack of evidence, the case against Wilder was eventually dropped. The impetus for her to come forward in 2013 was due in part to the fact that a friend of her daughter played on a soccer team that Wilder helped train, which included regularly massaging the young girl's legs. Emilie was found dead in her apartment in November 2014, more than a year after the two secretly recorded conversation. The case against Wilder was ongoing and he was out on bail. She was found face down in a large trash can in her bedroom. Her cause of death was put down to asphyxiation from the plastic lining of the trash can, but the manner of her death was undetermined by the country medical examiner, who ruled it suspicious. Here's why: her apartment door was unlocked. No one could ascertain how her body had been found in its position, a blanket swaddling her lower half while a trash can, 16 inches at its widest, constricted her upper body. Having struggled with alcoholism, at first glimpse it could appear that Emilie had drunk herself to death. There was an empty bottle of vodka in her room. Toxicology reports, however, put her blood concentration at less than 0.05%, legal limit is 0.08%. Her family believed her to be in good spirits. She was also claustrophobic and would have never committed suicide by tucking herself in a trash can, they said. She was also looking forward to an important court date coming up a few days later, in which she could finally confront Wilder. When Emilie died in 2014, all charges were dropped against Wilder, in spite of his taped confession. This was allegedly due to the confrontation clause in the Sixth Amendment, which requires defendants, Wilder, to be given the right to confront their accusers, Morris. An accuser's death also makes statements made outside of court more complicated to be used as evidence. If you want any information, BuzzFeed News did a great write-up on it, replete with all of Wilder's admissions from the man himself. Side note, did not realize BuzzFeed did any real journalism, but the article itself is extremely well researched and written. The more you know.
Quote, which included regularly massaging the young girl's legs. End quote. Reminds me of the Larry Nassar case. The parents of victims were talking about how he'd do minor weird stuff first to see if the family would push back or not.
Thanks for this. Very interesting. Also, who tries to kill themselves with a rubbish bin?
Wow, those audio clips are disgusting. Even decades later, he can't even be honest about what a scumbag he is, talking about how he tried to resist but she, a teenaged girl, was just too persuasive.
Thanks for posting this story. For the past 3 years I've been making documentary about college sports. One thing that really surprised me was how many of the athletes and coaches reported abuse in high school and sometimes as early as grade school and camp. I'm not a sports fan at all, but this issue fell before me when a former student confided some abuse from her coach. I've really grown to enjoy the Unresolved Mysteries sub, and wanted to reach out and say that if anyone has any insights or stories you can PM me or check out the sizzle trailer below. The trailer is pretty unfocused and hectic, but I had to put it out there for my own sanity and also to help me figure out the structure of the longer story. The US has a really weird relationship with athletes that was shocking to me as a non-fan. There's this pervasive attitude that athletes get to go to school for free, and that anyone who complains is a whiner. In truth, the system is ripe for exploitation and the ignoring of abuse. It's so weird to find such clear cases over and over again of such black and white moral and ethical issues and yet so few people willing to make a stand for these kids. This thing has really exhausted all of my resources and I appreciate all the help I can get. Link.
I'm local and I remember when all of this went down. The teachers at Lindbergh tried not to talk about it, but I know several people who had Wilder as a coach and they'd mention how they never saw anything out of the ordinary. It's still creepy to see a story about your school on BuzzFeed News.
So, what's your theory on what happened? Post it in the comments below. Thank you for listening. You can find the original post in r/unresolved mysteries through the link in the description box below. I like being able to listen to posts when I'm busy doing something else and can't read them. So I made this video for anyone who wants to listen to their Reddit posts. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and don't forget to hit the subscribe button below to get more puzzling mysteries.